Good day everyone. Today I would like to present an introduction to the Norizan Saleh case, a case in Malaysia that has drawn significant public attention due to its involvement of a police shooting during an enforcement operation. In this case is important because it raises serious legal and ethical concern, particularly regarding the use of force by the law enforcement officer and the protection of civilian right to life and personal safety. Incidents involving police action are often closely examined, especially when civilians are injured or even worse, killed. In this presentation, we will focus on the legal principle related to assault and battery as well as invaluable defenses.
On 4 September, the Kuala Lumpur High Court ruled in lawsuit filed by Norizan Saleh against the government of Malaysia and several police officials. In this incident, the case stemmed from a shooting in 2009 where Norizan was a passenger in a car and that was fired upon by police at 4 a.m. early in the morning. Norizan was hit in her wrist, arm, and chest. She was severely injured, requiring surgery to remove a bullet from her lung. On November 11, 2009, she made a report at the Kapong police station claiming the defendant assaulted her, and then Norizan had filed another suit against the police and the government for assault and battery in October 2012, and named the Sentul Police Chief, Inspector General of Police and police officer as defendant. The judge found the police action to be unjustified and unlawful by not merely firing into the air, but shooting directly into the vehicles without proper causes. The damage award gained by Norizan Saleh is 200,000 ringgit Malaysia for public interest and exemplary purposes, 50,000 ringgit Malaysia for pain and suffering, 50,000 ringgit Malaysia for assault and battery, and 18,326 ringgit Malaysia for special damages. The victim reaction is that Norizan felt relief because the judgment showed she was not at fault, clearing her reputation after years of blaming following the incident.
The first type of trespass to person that occurred in this incident is assault. Assault is an intentional and direct act of the defendant which causes the plaintiff reasonable apprehensions of the immediate infliction of force onto this person. The first element is the threat must be immediate force. In this case, a police patrol approached Norizan's car and suddenly opened fire, injuring her wrist, arm, and chest. Shooting directly at car creates a threat of force that is immediate and real. The second element is the mental state of plaintiff. Norizan was inside the car when the officer fired without warning. She was conscious of being shot at and experienced injuries, demonstrating that she apprehended the danger. The third element is the defendant's abilities to carry out the threat. Officer was armed and physically present at the scene. By firing at the car, the officer demonstrated the actual capacity to inflict. Therefore, all of the assault elements are satisfied in this incident.
Next, I'm going to explain the element of battery. Battery is when someone intentionally applies force towards someone else's without their consent. The first element of battery is the intention of the defendant to apply force. In this case, the police officers deliberately fire his weapon toward the car where the plaintiff was sitting, rather than firing into the air as claimed. That shows an intent to apply force. The next element is the act was under the defendant's control. The firing of gun was an act fully controlled by the officer. He chose when, where, or how to shoot. This means that the action was not accidental or out of someone else's control. In this case, the act of discharging a firearm was entirely under the officer's control. The third element is the contact or application of force occur. In battery, it's required that force was applied. In this case, a bullet hit the victim's wrist, arm, and chest, and the bullet was later surgically removed from her lung. That physical contact in injury is clear evidence that force was applied. The last element of battery is without plaintiff consent. The victim clearly did not consent to being shot. There was no justification or lawful reason that would make her. The court also found the shooting was unlawful and unjustified, meaning there was no defense to explain or excuse the force
There
used.
are several available defenses for this case. One of the available defenses is self-defense. Self-defense is only allowed if it is necessary, and the force used must be proportionate. There must be an imminent threat. So, why self-defense cannot be used in this case? In this case, Nurizan Saleh, the plaintiff, was unarmed, and she did not pose immediate danger. There was no imminent threat. So, the defendant's act of shooting was not a reasonable force. In conclusion, the self-defense claim is rejected.
The next possible defense is lawful arrest. For this defense to apply, this force used during the arrest must be reasonable, and shooting is justified only if absolutely necessary. However, this defense fell in this case because, first of all, the plaintiff, Nurizan, was not resisting arrest. Second, there was no attempt to use minimal force. Lastly, shooting a civilian during arrest was therefore unlawful. Therefore, the defense of lawful arrest is not applicable in this incident.
For the third available defense, I will explain consent. Consent means a person voluntarily agrees to a particular act or physical contact. In law, consent can sometimes be used as a defense. However, in the case of Nurizan Saleh, consent cannot be applied. This is because Nurizan Saleh did not give any consent to be shot by a police. Moreover, under the law, there are no individual can legally consent to being shot or seriously harmed. In addition, police shooting usually happens sudden and without warning, especially during law enforcement operation. Because of this, it is impossible for a consent to exist in such situation. Therefore, consent is clearly irrelevant and not applicable as a defense in this case.
To sum up the Nurizan case, the defendant committed assault and battery because the police caused direct physical harm by shooting her. Defenses such as self-defense and lawful arrest were not applicable because there was no immediate threat and the force used was disproportionate. So, the consent could not be given. As a result, the court held the defendants liable and awarded damages.